to the Week 5 Tonto's Demise recap. Let's see. This week, not nearly as crazy or exciting as the past couple weeks have been, um, although frustrating for a few of us. I'd have to say this week was definitely frustrating for 6 of us at least, and extra frustrating for a couple others, and quite satisfactory for at least for 6 of us. Let's see. Interesting to note that the the bottom 3 teams in the standings currently after this week are the reverse of the draft order. I don't know if that means something or if it's pure coincidence or what's going on, but Jay had the first pick and he is 12th. I was number 2, and I'm down at 11. And the Rook, who was obviously number 3, he is 10th. So we are reversing the draft order in the standings here from top. Now we are stuck at the bottom. I don't know what the exact reasons are. Underperformance, bad luck in a lot of cases, I'd have to say, but definitely underwhelming performances by the top 3 draft picks, especially LaShawn McCoy, Jamal Charles, and Eddie Lacy. Lacy didn't do too much until this past week. As we all know, the Rook traded him away. Jamal Charles did very little in week 1 and I think it was week 2, sprained his ankle, cost me a win there. Didn't play for a week. Came back, had one good game. Last week when I was already ahead and didn't really need anything from him anyway. And this week he put up another very low total. I think it was 9 points, something like that. And LaShawn McCoy, like I said, probably the biggest disappointment so far this year. I don't even know what his point totals have been. They've been extremely low. Definitely not number 1 overall pick worthy, more like late round flyer worthy point totals. But it's still early. These guys, they're some of the best at their position. I don't know if you just have to wait around and for them to come around and turn it on, but we're 2 of us are 1 and 4, and Gags is 2 and 3, so we can only sit around waiting so long for these guys to start performing up to what their level of expectation is, and so we'll see. Like I said, it wasn't too many not nearly any close matchups this week. We had one really good one, maybe one more that was debatable going into Monday night, but other than that, this week was mostly decided on Sunday by fairly decent margins here. So let's get right into it with the defending champ, the Rook. Once again, going down in defeat to You My Puddin' by a score of 170.1 to 110.4. 110, not going to cut it most weeks in most leagues. As for You My Puddin', not very big numbers from a lot of people, except Andre Ellington and Antonio Gates, who you had just traded for, which a very not questionable trade in terms of like collusion or trade rape or whatever you want to call it, but Antonio Gates for Trent Richardson, really? And you didn't even use Trent Richardson? He's just, the guy is atrocious. I don't really know any other way to say it. He's extremely slow. Anytime I've seen him play, he just is awful. I don't think he's ever run for more than 5 yards at a time. Maybe okay, maybe 10. But and Gates went out, scored 2 touchdowns for you might put in. Andre Ellington, another huge game for him. 2 touchdowns. One of them was a long touchdown, but unfortunately, I think it was a receiving touchdown. So you didn't get you missed out on, looks like 112 receiving yards, but you got the 3-point bonus for it being a long touchdown. And what else? So 30 from him, 22 from Gates. Went with Eli Manning, got you 36 points. So not really big numbers all around, but consistency up and down. You might put in his lineup, except for Michael Floyd and Victor Cruz. But it was definitely enough to take down you might put in, who got very minimal performances from guys like Doug Martin, Delaney Walker. Reggie Bush went down with injury. Titans defense ended up blowing a huge lead against the Cleveland Browns and losing that game. Not much from Edelman. Not much from anybody really in this one. So obviously, and you can see that with the score of 110, and that moves you might put in up this week to 3-2, all the way up to 4th place, and the Rook drops down to 2-3, and he falls to, as I already mentioned, 10th place. And how about we get right to the big matchup of this week? It was decided on Sunday night. There was nobody to go on Monday, but Brian texted me on Sunday asking if he was at all close in this matchup, and I took a look at Jimmy's lineup and saw Andrew Luck had 55, Demaryius Thomas 50 points from him, Matt Forte almost 33 points. Eagles defense 2 more touchdowns, a bunch of turnovers. Just they've been absolutely on fire these past couple weeks. And I know Drew Brees did pretty good, 55 from him. Eddie Lacy pretty good. I'm gonna say about 25 from him, but really not too much else other than, let's see. Ben Tate had 100 yards. Lewis Murphy caught a touchdown, almost 20 from T.Y. Hilton. But not thinking about the San Diego Jets game, which I think that game was on TV here, but it was so just uninteresting to me in every way. I did not bother watching it. And so just looking at these numbers, I thought, oh, there's no possible way that Brian could even be close in this one. Like I said, 55, 50, 32, 28 from all those guys on Jimmy's team. But it ended up being, it was actually, once I figured out the San Diego defense, I know they got a shutout, but it didn't have too many turnovers or anything like that. But once we got into the box score, and the numbers were just absolutely ridiculous by the New York Jets. I think they only had 60 yards passing, which was 9 points. Yahoo says San Diego got 23, but I believe it was more like double that, up to it was 40, 45, somewhere in that range if I remember, which bumped Brian all the way up over the 200-point barrier at 203.15. Unfortunately for him, he played the only team who would have beaten him this week with a score of 213.1, which was Jimmy, and thus, unfortunately for Brian, cheers to you on a bitter defeat. Trust me, I know what it's like losing to the team that scored the highest amount of points in that week, knowing you would have beaten every other team. But at least your matchup wasn't so close that you thought you'd originally won, and then a couple of days later, you find out that no, you actually lost, thanks to a stat correction. Anyway, Jimmy, New Gods Mad Titans, the commish moves up to 4-1, takes over the first place spot with his high point total, second highest point total so far this season, I believe. And Brian, the Detonators, falls down to 2-3 and moves down to, 8th place. Next, we had the Dub C Hooligans going up against the Springfield Isotopes. This was a battle of 1 and 3 teams. Both of them needed a win. Only one of them could get it. Unlikely that we would have a tie, although it would have been quite amusing if that had happened. But anyway, things were looking good after Thursday night. Aaron Rodgers, 34 points, 35 from him. He didn't really do too much. Sat out the entire fourth quarter, I believe, because that game was way out of hand for the Minnesota Vikings. As you know, the final score was 42-10, something like that. For Dub C, pretty good stats up and down his lineup. 18 points from Sanders. Another 16 from Cooks, mostly on catches, not really any yards from him. Kendall Wright goes out and catches 2 touchdowns this week. Zach Stacy doesn't do much. DeMarco Murray got, actually about half of his points got chopped off because he did a lot of receiving yards this week. Kelsey didn't do too much, but he did manage a touchdown early on. Houston defense, decent game. You had your defense going up against your running back, but still fairly decent score from them. Justin Forsett manages to, 50 yards receiving on 7 catches. You had him in your flex. I think he had about 50 rushing yards and a touchdown. 22, 23 points from him. Like I said, Jamal Charles, 9.4 from him. So Justin Forsett, a waiver wire pickup, almost tripling the output of Jamal Charles. Nothing you can do about that. Another poor performance, I'd have to say, from Matthew Stafford. No low on the yardage, low on the touchdowns, only 1. Just not doing very well this year. I don't know if it's thought that they'd be in a good matchup here with Buffalo. I don't know if it's because of Calvin Johnson or just not adjusting to their new coach. I can't remember his name. Caldwell. I do remember his name. Caldwell's sort of conservative approach to coaching. But anyway, let's see. Dez Bryant, pretty good game. Antonio Brown, not much from him. He just barely survived his or extended his 5-catch game streak. I think it was one of their very last plays of the game. They threw a little screen pass to him instead of kneeling down. I think they actually did, if I remember correctly, I think they knelt down for one play, then realized that Antonio Brown only had 4 catches, so they threw that quick pass to him to get him to 5. No touchdowns from him. Steve Smith, not very little from him. Ridley, good game though, 113 yards and a touchdown. Picked up Green Bay's defense Thursday night, which was quite surprising that nobody else had gotten to them first. They ended up putting up, I believe, 36 points. Ended up being a lot better than any defense that I had. I knew I was in a tough spot for my defenses this past week, and I was able to scoop them up and plug them in. Unfortunately, I don't think they're they're not really worth keeping because they don't really have any good matchups the rest of the way. So I'm probably gonna toss them out there just if anybody is interested. Look forward to that, being able to pick up the Green Bay defense because I have no interest in them after this little plug and play, unless they play Christian Ponder every week. But so yeah, underperformances from a lot of players. Not much you can do. And I think probably the worst part about losing this week is that I lost to Kevin, and as the Patriots-Bengals game was a blowout halfway through the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, it could have been really good for me with Stephen Ridley. He could have piled up some garbage time rushing yards, maybe a touchdown or two. And Kevin says, "Oh, I'm really worried about these garbage time points, blah, blah, blah. You could really catch up to me." And the only scoring in the fourth quarter were three Gostowski field goals. I think he ended up with 5 field goals total. 19 points on Yahoo. I think it was a little bit more like 20, 21, something like that. So, and let's see. Did I even say what the score was? The score was 172.4 to 156.25. So a 16-point difference when your kicker scores over 20 and Justin Forsett 23. 2 touchdowns from Kendall Wright. Come on. You get a week where Aaron Rodgers doesn't do anything, and then I can't capitalize on it. So, but that's the way it goes. And like I said, it was a battle of 1 and 3 teams. Both of them needed this win. Unfortunately for me, Kevin got it. He moves up to 2 and 3, and he is in 7th place. And the Isotopes drop all the way down to 1 and 4, all the way down in 11th place, as I believe I already mentioned. Next, we had FC Bohoric, who was at the time the first place team, going up against Nick Foley and Dynamite. And FC pulled this one out, 177.3 to 151.45, I believe. Yes. Let's see. Matt Ryan, 50 points from him. I think he had a long touchdown. Another 21 from Julio Jones on 11 catches. Would have been nice for you if he could have added a touchdown or 2 in there. Jordy Nelson, as we already mentioned, 1 catch for him. But fortunately for Justin, it was a 66-yard touchdown. So +3. 1 catch on the game, and he gets you 16 and a half points. Good game from Reggie Wayne. Fred Jackson, most of his damage was receiving, so you lost that. Cordarrelle Patterson, less than 3 points from him. I don't really know what there is to do with that guy anymore. Like, the preseason hype was at crazy levels about this guy in the preseason, but in here in the season, I don't know what's going on. If it's North Turner running the offense, I don't know why they're not throwing the ball to him or just getting the ball in this guy's hands. Week 1, he had that 70-yard touchdown run, but he's clearly, without Adrian Peterson, the guy is clearly the best athlete on their offense. I don't know why they don't just throw long passes to him a couple times a game, see what happens. Find some way to get the ball in this guy's hand. But I don't know if he's just not picking up the offense or he just doesn't run routes. He's not a good route runner. He just tries to rely on his speed or what it is. I don't know. I think Matthew Berry might have given up on Cordarrelle Patterson, and it looks like Justin might be doing the same here very soon. But as soon as that happens, that's when he's going to start taking off, because that's just the way fantasy football works. And out of character for the FC Bohoric, his defense was the Buffalo Bills this week, and they came back against the Detroit Lions in Detroit, snuck out a win. I don't know if it was overtime or if it was at the end of the game, but I believe the Lions already cut the new kicker that they picked up. Was it Henry? I think he missed 3 field goals in that game. Definitely cost them a victory there. So yeah, good. Like I said, good matchup, up and down for FC Bohoric once again. Gets another win. As for Nick Foley and Dynamite, decent game from Foles. Another dud from Pierre Garcon. I don't know what's going on with him. Clearly their best offensive player in the receiving game. Deshaun Jackson, one-trick pony, but he seems to be getting the long passes, converting them. Excuse me. Getting those long passes every now and then, converting them for touchdowns, which he did on Monday night. Unfortunately for, I think it's Gags, he did not use Deshaun Jackson. Good game for Jeffrey, only 1 catch for Wheaton. Jennings got hurt, looks like he's going to be out for a while. Picked up Reeves and plugged him in, not much from him though. Jimmy Graham also got hurt, knocked out after only 5 points, but made up for by 22 from Gronkowski. Phil Dawson, the San Francisco kicker, went crazy with 2 50-plus yard field goals, 2 30-yarders, and another one from a 20. So he was up over 20 points for you here. Denver defense, not too great, but good enough against the Arizona Cardinals. In real life, I guess good enough. Not nearly good enough in fantasy with only a couple of sacks. Looks like they didn't have any turnovers, which was probably the real difference here in the Buffalo defense piling up some points. And, well, plus injuries. Because they had injuries to Jennings, injuries to Graham, and just 2 catches from Garcon and 2 from Wheaton. Is not going to get it done this week. 151 points. And with that one, FC Bohoric, even though he wins, he drops from first place down to second at 4-1, thanks to New Gods Mad Titans and his extremely high score this week. And Nick Foley and Dynamite drops down to 9th place at 2-3. And who should we talk about next? All right, let's go with the apples of Brian's eyes. Possum Magic and McCoy's Homeboys. I don't know if Brian. I know he was very heavily dissing Possum Magic early on in the season. Rightly so, though, I think, because his guys were just atrocious. And we were all kind of jealous of McCoy's Homeboys. I'd have to, at least speaking for myself, put together a good, what appeared to be a solid draft. A lot of good players up and down his lineup. Somehow he managed to put that together. But and here he sits after this one, because Possum Magic took this one down 156.95, to 119.7. Another really low score from McCoy's Homeboys. Let's see, even though you got 52 from Romo and Greg Olson, 2 touchdowns on 6 catches from him, 25 points. Other than that, like I said, LaShawn McCoy not doing too much this year. Looks like he had 80 yards and he lost a fumble, so you got 6 points from him. You plugged in Chris Ivory and Percy Harvin in your flex, which, taking a quick look here at your bench players, I see that we've changed things up from previous weeks. Arian Foster was no longer in your lineup, and Pierre Thomas pulled him out from your flex position and plugged in Percy Harvin. And it looks like those 2 decisions cost you this matchup, I'd have to say, because Arian Foster, let's see, 18 and 12, 30 point. You would have gotten 30 from him, which is a 25-point improvement over Chris Ivory. Pierre Thomas's 31 points would have been a 23-point improvement. So you tack on, if you tack on 48 points to what you should have had or potentially could have had, McCoy's homeboys would have taken this one down. But the mad scientist did a little tinkering with his lineup, which is hard to I tell you from experience, it's really hard not to do that. To just the more tinkering you do, the worse. That's when bad things happen. You just got to leave your guys in, the guys you drafted to play, and let it go. For the most part, unless you get an obvious great matchup like the Packers D against Christian Ponder, something like that. But those don't come around very often. And that's pretty much the story of this one. Jay shot himself in each foot by benching Arian Foster and Pierre Thomas, because those two guys, he took out Miles Austin instead of Percy Harvin, and those two guys would have made the difference. Nothing new here in this one for the Possum Magic. Long touchdown added in gave Peyton Manning a grand total of 72, approximately. The quiet games from Keenan Allen and Benjamin. Ahmad Bradshaw didn't do too much. McKinnon, really nothing from him. 0 from Larry Donnell. Not much from Larry Fitzgerald. Not much from your kicker. Pretty decent score from your defense. Even they got a defensive touchdown, even though they ended up losing. But it was Brian Quick. 5 catches, 87 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 25 points from him. So 72 from Manning, 25 from him. Just about 100 points just from those two guys. So between Peyton Manning, Brian Quick, and the Detroit Lions defense, those three pretty much took down McCoy's homeboys all by themselves this week. With the 119, pretty much, I think those three probably combined for more than that. And unfortunately for Jay, and that's just not your defense. A lot of players really let you down, but I feel your pain because we're in the same boat here with our top draft picks. But again, another really low score for you, drops you down not only to 1-4 this week, but also all the way down to 12th place. And as for Possum Magic, he is riding a 3-game win streak after starting 0-2, and he is all the way up to 5th place. Last matchup this week was Huber Slayers going up against the Twerkin Bowl Cuts, and this one was the only one outside of the only really good matchup, but that could have gone either way outside of Jimmy and Brian's 200 to 200 point explosion, whatever you want to call that. But this one had potential going into Monday night for both teams. Twerk and Bowl Cuts had the Seattle Seahawks defense, and Detling had Alfred Morris and Niles Paul, and he was down 12 points. So this one really could have gone either way. Seattle's defense hasn't been too good on the road. I think a couple weeks ago they got you 1 point in a game. I don't know if it was at the Denver game, maybe. The Seattle game, maybe. I don't know, or not Seattle, San Diego, where they got blown out. But the Seahawks their defense didn't do too great. Got you about 20 points, something like that. But Alfred Morris, only 29, 30 yards from him. Niles Paul, only one catch. So Hubert Slayers only tacked on 5 points, really, on Monday night. And it was more than enough to cover that by Twerk and Bullcuts with his defense. Really ended up not being a matchup. The final on this one was 154.55 to 125.45. Yeah, so you got 22 from the Seattle defense. So Detling would have needed about 35 from Morris and Niles Paul. And going up against the Seahawks defense, that's a pretty tall task to ask for anybody to put up that many points against those guys. You got to get a couple touchdowns, and that just did not happen this week. But what else? Roethlisberger outscored Newton. Macklin went toe-to-toe with Randall Cobb, actually outscored him a little bit. Again, I think everybody who played Packers players outside of Eddie Lacy this week kind of suffered because the offense got up a huge lead, didn't have to do too much, sat these starters in the second half, fourth quarter. It was Calvin Johnson against Golden Tate. We all know how that one has gone. Looks like Calvin Johnson probably should have not even played in this game, or at least taken a week off to heal his ankle. But went in, played, I think, on his first catch, immediately takes a shot to the ankle and leaves for the rest of the game. 1 point from him. 8 catches for 144 yards, though, for Vincent Jackson. Good one from him. Le'Veon Bell, most of his points got cut off because they were receiving points. He put in Josh, is it his name Josh Brown? I don't know. John Brown from the receiver for Arizona, thinking maybe that this game would be a shootout and Arizona would have to do a lot of passing, which it ended up being that way, but the quarterback situation was very in flux for Arizona. I think Stanton got hurt, and so that wasn't much from him. San Francisco defense went up against Kansas City, won the game, but gave up pretty good amount of points and yards from against a very usually a pretty disciplined Chiefs team. One turnover. It's not a huge score from them. Let's see. Not much from Greg Jennings. Not much for Monty Ball. C.J. Spiller. Nothing from him really. Julius Thomas, 6 for 60 and two more touchdowns for him. 25 points there. Reuben Randall, 13 from him. As I said, 22 from the Seahawks defense was enough. I think I didn't mention that Golden Tate had 26.4. So a couple big games from some key players was definitely enough to easily take this one down. And the Hubert Slayers fall to 3-2 after this one, but they're still in third place. The Twerk and Bullcuts are also 3-2, but they remain all the way down in sixth place. Let's see. Anything else to really say about this week? Not too much. I just here looking at the last matchup. One thing I keep getting. I understand about LeGarrette Blount. I keep getting knocked for keeping him in my starting lineup. Like, why would you do that? The guy's a backup running back. But here looking at Twerk and Bullcuts, his two running backs. Well, he's got Monty Ball and C.J. Spiller. Monty Ball had 7 rushing yards. I understand that he got hurt, but C.J. Spiller 8 rushing yards. So you got 1.5 points from these two guys, and I got, I think, 3 points from LeGarrette Blount. So I understand that we're debating 2 points versus 3 points, but it doesn't. I'm not. LeGarrette Blount is just as likely to go out and break a big run and maybe punch in a touchdown or two, especially in a week like this one where they were playing Jacksonville. He did it against Carolina, which I wasn't expecting, but every game I've watched the Steelers games this year, every time LeGarrette Blount gets in and gets some carries, the guy looks good. He just trucks people over and looks like he's gonna break it every time they give him the ball. So, and plus my other options aren't really that good anyway. So the guy's just got to stay in there. Any other last things to mention? New Gods Mad Titans. I said he's moved up to number 1. He's also overtaken the top point total so far. He's 9 points ahead of FC Bohoric. And the Isotopes dropped down to 3rd in overall points, even though, as I mentioned, we're in 11th place. We're 18 points behind Jimmy and 10 places in standings. But here's probably the most frustrating part for me, and this is just, nobody else is probably interested in this, it's just me venting as I sit here and look at the standings, that here I'm in 11th place, got 882 points, and the guy in 10th place, about right above me, has 617. It's a 260 point difference. In 5 weeks, I've scored 260 more points than you. That's like 50 points a week. And you're still ahead of me. It's making me just really, really frustrating. But I haven't given up hope. 1-4, gotta make a run here. You're not out of it till you get to 7 losses, and you're not in it till you get to 7 wins. Though I don't want to say that is set in stone, because Detlinger pointed out that it's wrong, because Justin did not make it last year, I know, but usually, for 95% of the time, 7 is the magic number. You want to get to one of those numbers, preferably with wins. But like I said, it's just frustrating. And it's happened before to a lot of people. I think Brian knows from experience. He's been in that position before, Kevin too, where you have an extremely high point total, but you've just gotten bad luck, bad situations, nothing you can do about it. I believe, I also am the highest scored against team so far, only by a little bit. Next to Jimmy, thanks to that 200-point game that he managed to win against Brian this week. But it's just really frustrating to sit here from week to week, especially from week 5 here to week 6, looking at the standings and seeing myself below the Rook, but like I said, 260 points ahead of him in the point total. Ugh, it's gotta have another drink to that. Anyway, week 5, knockout pool. Don't think I mentioned this because it was the last matchup we talked to. But this week, getting knocked out with his score of 125.45. Wave goodbye to the Huber Slayers. Matt Detling, gone. You are out of the pool. And mentioned this before. Don't know if it was taken care of yet. Talked to Jimmy. He said that still there were two guys who did not pay their league dues. If that has not happened yet, this week, if we do enforce the rule, which I believe, I don't know why we wouldn't, because what's the point of having the rule if we're not going to use it? But so hopefully those guys have taken care of their league dues. Otherwise, they're going to lose their quarterback points this week. Those guys, they know who they are. So hopefully they have either taken care of it already, or they're going to take care of it here very soon. Although I believe I would not mind it this week if one of those guys happens to have his quarterback points. Not gonna name any names, but if one of those guys happens to get his points removed this week, I would not be complaining. But so we'll see. But we'll see what happens. I'm sure they've gotten that taken care of. Hopefully by now. It's not in my control. It's in Jimmy's hands. So if he has to be the bad guy, that's his responsibility as commissioner. But again, pay your dues if you haven't done it. This week, Detling is out of the knockout pool. Jimmy takes over first place from Justin. And so we are bookends. The Huber brothers are bookending the standings this week at number 1 and number 12. So, all right. This week looks like it's going to be another interesting one. A lot of bye week problems for people. I think there's only a couple. There's a lot of weeks where there's only a few bye week teams, and there's like 2 or 3 weeks where there's a whole bunch. But looks like this one could be tough for a bunch of people. Anyway, should be some good matchups as always, and good luck to everyone. I feel like I'm just not gonna wish good luck to myself. I think maybe I jinxed. I should just stop doing that. But so I will. Good luck to everyone here in week 6 coming up. Can't believe we're almost halfway through the season already. But here we are. So, all right. See you guys next week, and good luck to everyone here this week.